Suburbs that are more walkable, more bikeable, and have better transit service than the central cities they're attached to. It makes no sense. No such places should exist, but trust me, they do. I found exactly 10 North American suburbs that fit this criteria, so this is a top 10 list with a bit of a philosophical bent. I mean, is it really a good thing when a suburb outpaces the central city in terms of urbanist qualities, or is that really saying more about the shortcomings of the central city itself? We'll talk about all of that coming up next. This is CityNerd, weekly content on cities and transportation. Viewer-suggested topics, always welcome, but this is one I kind of suggested to myself because a lot of the topic ideas I come up with just come up while I'm working on completely different videos. And in this case, it was when I was working on my video about Tempe, Arizona and the cul-de-sac car-free neighborhood. And I asked the question, is there any other suburb in the US that has better walk score, transit score, and bike score ratings than the central city it's a suburb of? Because Tempe is in that category. And okay, that is kind of a spoiler. Tempe does make today's list, but it turns out 9 other suburbs do too. And before I get to explaining what I did here, let's just pause and appreciate how truly insane it is that there's even one city that meets this criteria. The whole idea of a central city is that that's where the employment is, that's where the most density is, that's where the primary commercial destinations are, and metrics like walk score give a lot of credit for the density of destinations that are within a walkable distance. And okay, maybe a particular suburb is progressive in terms of walking and biking infrastructure, but it seems impossible that any suburb should have better transit provision than the central city itself, which is typically the hub of the entire regional network. So you could say this is a list of anomalies, but it's also maybe a list of potential places where you might think about living. Because for the most part, they're on this list because they're progressive when it comes to transportation investments. They actually want to be more multimodal than their central cities. The term methodology is kind of a stretch for what I did here, which is basically compare the ratings across all 3 walk score metrics and identify suburbs that matched or exceeded the ratings of the central city. I'll use Somerville, Massachusetts, which was a close call, as an example here, and I'll come back and touch on a few more close calls when I get to honorable mentions later in the video. For ranking, I'm going to go through these in order of the total number of points by which they exceeded the total of the central city, and Somerville does exceed Boston in the aggregate, but since it falls short on transit rating, which is really the toughest one, it doesn't make the list. Caveats, when I say these are places you might consider moving, just be aware. Suburbs that rate well on all this stuff are usually not cheap places to live, but keep in mind, I evaluated all of these relative to their central cities, so there's going to be some decent variety. Okay, that was all the setup, so let's get into it. Number 10, Paradise, Nevada. Not actually an incorporated city, but it is a census-designated place, and the walk score methodology puts it above Las Vegas across the board. I will comment on and critique the ratings as I go through this list because I've been to most of the places I'm going to be talking about. Note that a lot of what you might think of as Las Vegas, meaning the resort corridor on the Strip, is actually Paradise, Nevada, and you aren't in Las Vegas proper until you get north of Sahara Avenue. I kind of feel like Las Vegas is more walkable and bikeable per square mile than Paradise. It has a more recognizably urban form, but if we're weighting the overall scores geographically by the locations that actually attract the most humans, you can start to see why Paradise scores better. The Strip has an entire pedestrian realm that is separate from the street environment, and it also features the highest frequency transit service in the metro area, so I'll buy it. Number 9, Santa Clara, California, the first suburb out from San Jose as you travel up the peninsula. So some of the cities we're going to talk about are, in a lot of ways, just more compact versions of the corresponding central city. San Jose is fairly suburban in nature in the first place. Santa Clara has a fairly walkable downtown grid with an adjacent college campus, and those things are going to support good walking and biking environments. And Santa Clara is served by the VTA light rail system and has 2 stops on the Caltrain, so it seems fair to say it's at least on par with San Jose. I actually have just a ton to say about VTA and Caltrain, so let's go to the next suburb traveling north, our number 8 city, Sunnyvale, also higher scores across the board than San Jose. And actually, you know what? I changed my mind. I'm not going to say a lot here because I literally just got back from the Bay Area riding the new electrified Caltrain up and down the peninsula, and I've got a whole video coming on that next week. Might even be up on Nebula already by the time you see this. Number 7, Davis, California. Higher scores across the board than the central city, Sacramento. I've talked about Davis a lot in my videos on college towns and small cities that are big on transit service, so it's really no surprise to see Davis here. In fact, college towns that are part of larger metro areas are a bit of a life hack. They have all kinds of good urbanism just on their own merits, and they usually have excellent access to the amenities of a bigger central city. And in the case of Davis, pretty good access into the Bay Area as well. Number 6, National City, California. I don't even pretend to understand how San Diego manages to score so low across the board that National City makes this list. A lot of what's going on here is central cities that are a bit sprawling, and San Diego does fit that category, and suburbs that are relatively compact, and National City checks that box. Well, that's going to have an impact, and a lot of National City is within walking distance of the San Diego Trolley Blue Line. Let's be real though, any city whose transportation system includes mile of cars road, complete with crosswalks that have a checkered flag paint scheme as if you're trying to get drivers to exceed the speed limit, really shouldn't be scoring higher than the central city, but here we are. Number 5, Norfolk, Virginia. I honestly wouldn't call Norfolk a suburb, but this is kind of an artifact of the approach I took, which is that I considered the central city of a metro area to be the city that's listed first in the name of the metro area, which I believe means it's the largest city, and that is Virginia Beach. Virginia Beach is pretty terrible across the board, but Norfolk is the only city in the Hampton Roads region that scores better on all 3 metrics. It is more central to the region than Virginia Beach and much more city-like in pretty much every way, including having a station on the Northeast Regional and containing the entirety of the Tide, which is the region's light rail system. Number 4, Decatur, Georgia, the first suburb you hit on your way out east from Atlanta on the MARTA Blue Line. I don't want to say too much about Decatur because I'm definitely going to check it out while I'm in Atlanta, although I might literally be in Atlanta if you're watching this on or around October 16th. But my impression from a distance is it's kind of like a mini version of Atlanta in that, yeah, it's low density sprawl when you get out from the center, but in the historic center where the MARTA station is, you've got the original bones of downtown Decatur plus a decent amount of newer transit-oriented development. So I'm guessing it is fair to say that the average resident of Decatur lives in a more walkable, more bikeable, more transit-rich environment than the average resident of Atlanta. And man, I cannot wait to have proper B-roll for this. Okay, in a minute I've got some honorable/dishonorable mentions. Honestly, I don't even know how to categorize them. And the top 3, and if you aren't already trying to guess what the top 3 are, then we can't be friends. You can make amends though by clicking on all the things, especially the bell, and connect on the apps if you want to keep up with my travels. By the time I mention somewhere that I'm gonna go in a video, that means I've probably already been there and back. Let's do a few close calls. Cambridge, Mass, better walk score than Boston, better bike score by a mile. Being a college town always helps a lot with that, but Cambridge just isn't gonna beat Boston on transit provision. Culver City, California, another compact city within a larger, more sprawling city. Better walk score and bike score rating than LA, but it's mostly the transit score that keeps these close calls off the list. And even though the Expo line runs right through the heart of it, Culver City just misses the cut. And finally, Palo Alto, better walk score than San Jose and a bike score of 91. Again, college town, and this is fresh B-roll, and I'll have a lot more to say about Palo Alto next week. By the way, one stop north on the Caltrain, Menlo Park is over the San Mateo County line, which puts it in the San Francisco-Oakland metro area, and since San Francisco has the highest walk score rating of any major city in the US, that means you are not going to see any of San Mateo County in this video, except for right now. But you will get a whole lot of San Mateo County content next week. A few metro areas that defied expectation. I was just sure that some city somewhere in the Inland Empire was gonna grade out better than Riverside, California, but I was wrong. Riverside is apparently as good as it gets. Detroit has a couple of those compact cities within a city, but the transit situation in Southeast Michigan is even more atrocious outside of Detroit. And then I actually thought I was going to be funny and include Windsor, Ontario as a suburb, because surely the Canadian city across the Detroit River has it all together, because Canada is so cool and progressive. But the walk score rating of 42 says otherwise. Also, I thought it would be funny to include Ann Arbor, which does score better on all counts, but Ann Arbor steadfastly maintains its own metropolitan area identity, rightly or not. And finally, Charlotte, North Carolina, worst walk score of any major city and just pretty abysmal ratings across the board, even though there are great neighborhoods. So I totally expected there to be some suburb or another that surpasses it since it's such a low bar, but the Charlotte suburbs say, you think those are bad scores? Hold my peach cobbler. Back to it, number 3, and you knew this one was coming because I already told you it was. It is Tempe, Arizona, which I recently did a whole video on, so I'm not going to spend time rehashing it, but it is home to the largest university in the United States, which always helps when it comes to political support for non-driving options. The Phoenix region's single light rail line travels right through the heart of the city. There's also the Tempe streetcar, and the bike infrastructure is noticeably better than what Phoenix has. I don't mean to imply that all of Tempe is as walkable as downtown, but the built environment really is more conducive to car-free living than what you have in most of Phoenix. Number 2, Mountain View, California, right between Sunnyvale and Palo Alto. Look, you guys, I have so much to say about Mountain View and the other Silicon Valley cities I went to this past week, and the upgraded Caltrain service, but suffice to say, these scores are fairly legit. And I can't wait to get done with this video so I can start putting that one together. I know what you're thinking though, Mountain View, not the most affordable city. So let's save you all some money by going to number 1, the much more affordable Santa Monica, California. Look, there are definitely parts of LA that are better provisioned for walking, biking, and transit, but we're talking citywide here, and Santa Monica has it all going on. I have a video from a couple years ago where I talk about how even though the LA red car trolley system hasn't existed for decades, it left behind all kinds of great urban fabric, and Santa Monica was an important part of that. Also, terminus for the Expo line, and maybe the D line in the future, but also pretty solid bus coverage, including the Big Blue bus, courtesy of your Santa Monica tax dollars. After all, for what you're paying for housing, there better be good transit service. We will talk about transit in the Bay Area next week. I just got back from there a couple days ago, and I'm actually leaving for Atlanta in a couple days. So yeah, I am traveling a lot this month. That means airports, hotels, questionable coffee shops. Basically, I'm hooking up to a lot of potentially dodgy Wi-Fi networks, but that is where today's sponsor, NordVPN, comes in. I mean, it's not like I'm out sipping single origin pour-overs while I'm filling out online tax forms. What I'm usually doing when I'm out and about is just writing or editing, but I do spend a lot of time in my Google account, including my YouTube studio, and I don't like spending a lot of time worrying about what kind of information I'm putting out on the local Wi-Fi. Public Wi-Fi shenanigans can come in a lot of forms, but here's one particular scenario that keeps me awake at night. They call this a man-in-the-middle attack, or I guess you could call it a person in the middle, but then you lose the alliteration. Anyway, they get you to log into a fake Wi-Fi hub with the name of the coffee shop in it, and then all of a sudden they're intercepting everything you send. Not optimal. Well, if you're logged into NordVPN, which is just one click, that person in the middle is just going to see a bunch of gibberish because NordVPN gives you next-gen encryption. Not to mention, it's going to block malware and trackers, and it's going to give you threat protection to alert you to things like phishing scams. The bottom line is, when I turn on my NordVPN connection, I feel like I can just focus on work and coffee. So this is why I recommend NordVPN so strongly. I've just got other things to think about when I'm in a new city, in a hotel, or getting coffee, and I don't need the security of my internet connection to be one of those things I have to think about. Also, I do travel outside the US from time to time, and NordVPN lets me access all the shows and sporting events I enjoy, just as if I was at home. Anyway, if you sign up for any of NordVPN's 2-year plans during this current promotional period, you're going to get 4 bonus months on top if you use my code. And just in case you needed more reasons to sign up, a NordVPN subscription also comes with access to their proxy browser extension, which is a more lightweight, flexible option for getting the benefits of a VPN. Like, if you're borrowing someone's computer, you can log in and add the extension, or if you have apps that you want to use with your actual IP address while your browser stays anonymous, it can come in handy for that too. NordVPN just takes the guesswork out of a lot of what you do online, and it does come with a 30-day money-back guarantee, so it's hard to go wrong here. For me, I just keep NordVPN logged in wherever I go because it works for everything I do. Again, make sure you use the code down in the description. It's at nordvpn.com/CityNerd. It is going to get you 4 months for free, and it'll really help support the channel as well. Thanks again. And that's all I've got. Thanks for joining, and thanks as always to the patrons whose direct support really gives me the freedom to put together very different kinds of content from week to week. Honestly, the variety is probably what keeps me sane. Keep the great topic suggestions coming. I'll be back with a new episode next week, and I'll see you then.